Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. I thought I would take a break from all the doom and gloom. You know, the world is ending, and it's ending tomorrow at 3:45. That's right, and you can choose whether that's AM or PM. But really, there's a lot of bad stuff going on. We all know that, and we have to we have to be aware of it. But we also have to not get bogged down and to get prepared. Over the last week, I've made a few videos talking about food, producing food, storing food, and on the live stream that we did last night, we talked about perimeter defense, home defense, not just self-defense. We covered that a little bit, but we talked a lot about myself and then people giving suggestions in the comments of how to protect your residence, your home, your homestead. And there's we had someone on there, don't laugh. Someone was on there asking of how to do it if you're unable to purchase a gun. Maybe you live in a place. I mean, of course, my immediate response is to find a different place to live. But, you know, for whatever reasons, maybe the law says that you can't own a gun for your past or whatever. Are there ways to protect yourself? So we cover that kind of stuff. So I figured let's hit the full trifecta of the basics of preparedness, and let's talk once again about medical stuff. Now, in the prepping world, and I'm not knocking it, so please understand, I'm not saying it's bad or it's wrong, but in the prepping world, there's a big focus on combat medicine in the sense of how to plug a hole. Most of your IFAKs, blowout kits, and most of the basic training that you would see on YouTube videos and can get in person, a lot of it is centered around what to do if someone gets stabbed or shot. And while that is absolutely excellent training to get a hold of and to have, you must understand when it comes to medicine, there's a whole lot more to it than just that. And the odds are you're going to face a whole lot more things than just that. In fact, you may never ever have to plug a hole from a bullet wound or a stab wound. But there's all kinds of other medical stuff that we face on a daily basis. It's just natural life, you know, people that are ill and maybe they filled up with fluid and they can't breathe, or you know, they've injured themselves in another way. And we need to be prepared for, I believe, a wider swath of emergency medicine than just that. Definitely get some stop the bleed type of class, some TCCC type of class, but then you need to keep going beyond that. In our local group, we started out with the TCCC type of training, the stop the bleed training, first aid training. Now we've gotten several of our people through first responder training, and we're moving into the emergency medical responder, EMR training. We've also done all sorts of administering emergency oxygen. We've done pediatric emergency care. We've done bloodborne pathogens, all sorts of other wilderness first aid, all sorts of other training within our group. And so what it's doing is giving our people a much better, well-rounded view of what you're going to face in emergency medicine. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to come out being a doctor or even a paramedic, but especially for SHTF scenarios, if you get as much of this training under your belt now as you can actually do a pretty decent job of keeping someone going long enough during an SHTF. And hopefully, maybe if you're fortunate enough, you can actually find a doctor to kind of pick up where you've left off in care giving that person. You know, some of you are in MAG groups, you know, some type of little community tribe groups that you have a little bit more robust focus in your medicine. Maybe because you have a doctor or a registered nurse or a paramedic or two in your group. And that is great. But not everyone is that fortunate. And so for those of you that don't have that already in your group, you should be doing everything you can to get extra training. It's not as difficult as you might think. Depending on the state that you live in, because some of these standards vary state to state, typically your first responder, your medical first responder, is someone that has about 40 hours of medical training. Then you move up from there, you have emergency medical responder, which is about 54, 56 hours of training. From that point on, you move into EMT. You're talking 120, 30 hours up to 150 hours of training. And then from there, you've got a couple of steps in between. But to make it simple, then you move into your paramedic training, which, you're talking, a college degree, basically. But you don't have to have that. Excuse me. You don't have to have that. It'd be great if you can. But for the average person, getting something like at least your first responder, at least emergency medical responder training is really going to be beneficial. And you can get that on your own. You can get that through places like the American Red Cross, a few other organizations. And I'm not a big fan of them, okay? But they do offer really good medical training. Something like BLS, basic life saving, those types of things that you can get are going to, put you a lot better off. This is some of the stuff I carry as a first responder with the fire department. And I've gone through several different types of training that allows me to use a lot of the stuff that you would see and then some. And I know this is going to ruffle a few feathers because I've said this in the past and people just get so irritated for some reason. But if you want to be really prepared when it comes to emergency medical problems that you might face in an SHTF, I would suggest contacting your local volunteer fire department. And I know that most of you live in an area where it's a local volunteer fire department, and talk to them. Sometimes, not all of them, sometimes they will take people on just as a medical person. And that's all that they will do. They may not have to go out and fight fires. They may just respond to medical calls only. And if you get you some training under your belt and you go to your volunteer fire department, it's quite possible that you might be able to help answer medical calls. And I assure you, the knowledge and training you will pick up on taking and going on those calls will be way better than any kind of scenario-based training that you could go through, because you can't come up with every scenario. But if you're actually out there going on medical calls on a regular basis, then you're actually doing the real life thing that you may have to do. I'm not going to go through all this. I've made videos going into detail about what I carry. But I believe that every prepper home, every homestead should have something similar to this. It doesn't have to be this bag, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But this is what I call a scene bag. This may be called a medic bag. It's not a paramedic bag in the sense that it doesn't have medications. But in this bag, I can take care of most immediate emergency medical situations, whether it be wounds, broken bones, burns, checking heart rates, blood pressure, breathing over here. We've got a BVM, narcotic overdose, even a way to transport someone if I had to. Obviously taking care of wounds and things like that. There's tourniquets in here, and there's ice packs, all the basics that you would need. This is way more robust than your typical IFAC. And while sure it's going to cost more, if you purchase the stuff on your own and not buy a whole kit altogether, it's actually not as expensive as you would think. And everything that is in this bag you can purchase without a license or without being part of a department or anything like that. And so I would highly recommend that every home have something like this, because there are going to be situations that a small IFAC, the type that you would carry on your belt, is just not going to take care of. This is the problem I have with those. They're great. I have several. I have, I think, 3 in this vehicle of the IFACs that you're familiar with. Those are designed originally and meant to be carried on your person, and they're for you. They're for you if you injure yourself. If you're out hunting, or if you're cutting wood, or if you're in a combat defense situation, they're for you. They're not meant for multiple situations or for more intense medical. They're just meant to kind of keep you going, plug the hole, keep you alive long enough. Whereas this is a much more robust. So I would suggest everyone start to look into getting something like this. This here is something that's going to be harder to get a hold of, but you can certainly go through the training for it. This is an oxygen tank. This is medical grade oxygen. I am approved to carry all of this, and so everything that's in here is what I need to administer emergency oxygen. Again, you can purchase everything but the oxygen that goes in this tank. You have to have a doctor's prescription to do that. Some of you may be able to get that, but being able to train on how to do this, it's good stuff. And you should probably have some training. Stuff like this, cervical collar. You know, it may not be a bullet wound, but it may be someone in your family falling, injuring themselves, hurting their neck. You don't know. So having this kind of thing on hand, you can purchase these right off of Amazon, the same ones that paramedics use. Having this kind of stuff on hand. This here is something I've promoted quite a bit. And I like the concept of it. It's something that all of our people carry now in their vehicles. And these are what we call mass casualty bags. It's basically an IFAC, except there's 4 or 5 of them here. So it's all the stuff that you would find in your typical IFAC, but there's multiples in here. And this all rolls up and it snaps together. And so the idea is, if there was a mass casualty type of event, multiple injuries, an auto accident with multiple injuries, mass shooting, anything like that, if every one of us carries one of these, we have our main scene bag, and then we can take this, and if there's more help that arrives, we can toss this at them and say, hey, jump in and help, do this, do that. As a prepper group, having something like this is going to be beneficial, because if you did have a scenario where there were a lot of injuries all at once for whatever reason, and there's so many scenarios that can happen, and I'm not talking about just the pew-pew kind, okay? I mean, that's important, okay? That kind of stuff is important, but we have to realize that that's not going to be the thing happening all the time. That's not going to be the only thing that we have to deal with. There are many other medical types of situations that we are going to have to deal with. People just become injured. They become injured now. I mean, that's the calls that I go on all the time. They have medical problems all the time. If you're on a homestead, you already know that you get injured all the time. So you don't have to be in a combat scenario for that to happen. But if you're not training for these other injuries, then there's a huge gap there. There's a big weakness in your plan. If your medical plan and your medical training is only to take care of combat-related injuries, we need to have other options and other plans and other training, and that's where this kind of stuff comes in. There's also things like backboards. I've got one in the back of the truck. An AED, I've got one of those in the truck. There's other things that you can get, but I'm telling you, having at least some of this basic stuff is really where we need to be putting a lot of focus on. And this is emergency medical. This isn't your medicine. This isn't your herbs. That's all part of it too. But this right here is just your emergency medical. This is closing the wound, keeping the person alive, taking care of the burn, the broken bone, the airway. All of that kind of stuff is taken care of with the stuff that you see here. And those are the immediate life-threatening scenarios that we will face. We will face whether it's because there's bad guys coming up the driveway with guns, or we will face them just because things happen. And it may be that those things happen and we don't have the ability or the option to call 911 and to have someone come out and help, or to take that person to the hospital. We may be on our own. And so having the right equipment on hand is what we need to be working towards. Because, again, you may be on your own in that scenario. And so don't keep your medical, especially your emergency medical, don't keep it so narrowly focused and think that one little IFAC or even 2 or 3 little IFACs is going to do the job. There are many other medical problems that you may face in an emergency, and you're going to need the right equipment. And you're going to really be upset with yourself if you haven't done so and purchased that and then got the training. The training is not that difficult. And if you look around, sometimes you can find it for a pretty reasonable price. And then, like I said, if you're in the right area, you may be able to join a volunteer fire department and put some of that training to use so that you become even better at it. So that when things fall apart, you don't just have training that you took a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 ago. You have that training plus all the multiple calls that you've been on and you've assisted in, and you have honed those skills, gotten better at those skills, developed new ones. There's things you learn out in the field that you're never going to get in training because they can't cover it all. This is the kind of stuff we need to be doing, because not only will we be potentially providing for our own food, our own water, our own defense, but also our own medical care. And we need to be doing that. No one has to go out and become a doctor. I mean, it'd be great if we all were when it comes to medical care. But at least doing this kind of stuff can definitely up the survivability level for our family and our community. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order and to prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.